Hello, reading room. We are here reading another chapter. There is a shirt on underneath there. We are reading another chapter. Bell Hooks, Race and Representation. I don't know if we'll get through another chapter. We haven't done that in a while in this book. Lots to say. So, girls, Chapter 10, Madonna. Plantation mistress or soul sister. Subversion is contextual, historical, and above all, social. No matter how exciting the destabilizing potential of text, bodily or otherwise, whether those texts are subversive or recuperative, or both or neither, cannot be determined by abstraction from actual social practice. This is Susan Bordeaux. That's a quote from Susan Bordeaux. I don't know. White women stars like Madonna, Sandra Bernhard, and many others publicly name their interest in and appropriation of Black culture as yet another sign of their radical chic. Intimacy with that nasty blackness good white girls stay away from is what they seek. To white and other non-Black consumers, this gives them a special flavor, an added spice. After all, it is a very recent historical phenomenon for any white girl to be able to get some mileage out of flaunting her fascination and envy of Blackness. The thing about envy is that it is always ready to destroy, erase, take over, and consume the desired object. That's exactly what Madonna attempts to do when she appropriates and commodifies aspects of Black culture. Needless to say, this kind of fascination is a threat. It endangers. Perhaps that is why so many of the grown Black women I spoke with about Madonna had no interest in her as a cultural icon and said things like, "The bitch can't even sing." It was only among young Black females that I could find diehard Madonna fans, though I often admire and yes, at times even envy Madonna because she had created a cultural space where she can invent and reinvent herself and receive public affirmation and material reward. I do not consider myself a Madonna fan. Once I read an interview with Madonna where she talked about her envy of Black culture, where she stated that she wanted to be Black as a child. It is a sign of white privilege to be able to see Blackness and Black culture from a standpoint where only the rich culture of opposition Black people have created in resistance marks and defines us. Such a perspective enables one to ignore white supremacist domination and the hurt it inflicts via oppression, exploitation, and everyday wounds and pains. White folks who do not see Black pain never really understand the complexity of Black pleasure. And it is no wonder then that when they attempt to imitate the joy in living, which they see as the essence of soul and Blackness, their culture productions may have an air of sham or falseness that may titillate and even move white audiences, yet leave Black folks cold. Needless to say, if Madonna had to depend on masses of Black women to maintain her status and cultural icon, she would have been dethroned some time ago. Many of Black women I spoke with expressed intense disgust and hatred of Madonna. Most did not respond to my cautious attempts to suggest that underlying those negative feelings might lurk feelings of envy and, dare I say it, desire. No, Black women I talked to declared that she wanted to be Madonna. Yet we have only to look at the number of Black women, entertainers, stars, Tina Turner, Aretha Franklin, Donna Summer, Vanessa Williams, Yo-Yo, etc., who gain greater crossover recognition when they demonstrate that, like Madonna, they too have a healthy dose of blonde ambition. Clearly, their careers have been influenced by Madonna's choices and strategies. For masses of black women, the political reality that underlies Madonna's and our recognition that this is a society where blondes not only have more fun, but where they are more likely to succeed in any endeavor is white supremacy and racism. We cannot see Madonna's change in hair color as being merely a question of aesthetic choice. I agree with Julie Burchill in her critical work Girls on Film when she reminds us, quote, what does it say about racial purity that the best blondes have all been brunettes? Harlow, Monroe, Bardot. I think it says that we are not as white as we think. I think it says that pure is a bore, unquote. I also know that it is the expressed desire of the non-blonde other for those characteristics that are seen as the quintessential markers of racial aesthetic superiority that perpetuate and uphold white supremacy. In this sense, Madonna has much in common with the masses of black women who suffer from internalized racism and are forever terrorized by a standard of beauty that they feel they can never truly embody. Like many black women who have stood outside the culture's fascination with the blonde beauty and who have been able to reach it through imitation and artifice, Madonna often recalls that she was a working class white girl who saw herself as ugly, as outside the mainstream beauty standard. And indeed, what some of us like about her way is the way she deconstructs the myth of natural white girl beauty by exposing the extent to which it can be and is usually artificially constructed and maintained. She mocks the conventional racist defined beauty ideal even as she rigorously strives to embody it, given her obsession with exposing the reality that the ideal female beauty in this society can be attained by artifice and social construction. It should come as no surprise that many of her fans are gay men and that the majority of non-white men, particularly black men, are among this group. Jeannie Livingston's film Paris is Burning suggests that many black gay men, especially Queen's divas, are equally driven as Madonna by blonde ambition. Madonna never lets her audience forget that whatever look she acquires is attained by hard work. It ain't natural. And as Burchill comments in her chapter Homosexual Girls, quote, I have a friend who drives a cab and looks like a Marlboro man, but at night is the second best Jean Harlow I have ever seen. He summed up the kind of film star he adores brutally and brilliantly when he said, quote, I like actresses who look as if they've spent hours putting themselves together, and even then they don't look right. Yeah. We should think about that for a minute. And they wouldn't look right. Right? Hours putting yourself together, you wouldn't look right. And everyone would know it. Why does she have on so much makeup? Right? What is she, a drag queen? Oh. Delish. That's a mix of French vanilla spice and Bengal spice. Not very spicy, believe it or not. Certainly no one, not even diehard Madonna fans, ever insist that her beauty is not attained by skillful artifice. And indeed, a majority point of And indeed, a major point of the documentary film Truth or Dare in Bed with Madonna was to demonstrate the amount of work that goes into the construction of her image. Yet when the chips are down, the image Madonna most exploits is that of the quintessential white girl. To maintain that image, she must always position herself as an outsider in relation to black culture. It is that position of outsider that enables her to colonize and appropriate black experience for her own opportunistic ends, even as she attempts to mask her acts of racist aggression as affirmation. That is one heavy duty sentence right there. I mean, the vision of her videos certainly could imply colonization of black men. And no other group sees that as clearly as black females in this society. For we have always known that the socially constructed image of innocent white womanhood relies on the continued production of the racist, sexist, sexual myth that black women are not innocent and never can be. Since we are coded always as fallen women in the racist cultural iconography, we can never, as can Madonna, publicly work the image of ourselves as innocent female daring to be bad. Mainstream culture always needs the black female body as sign of sexual experience. In part, many black women who are disgusted by Madonna's flaunting of sexual experience are enraged because the very image of sexual agency that she is able to project and affirm with material gain has been the stick this society has used to justify its continued beating and assault on the black female body. The vast majority of black women in the United States, more concerned with projecting images of respectability than with the idea of female sexual agency and transgression, do not often feel we have the freedom to act in rebellious ways in regards to sexuality without being punished. We have only to contrast a life story of Tina Turner with that of Madonna to see the different connotations wild sexual agency has when it is asserted by a black female. Being represented publicly as an active sexual being has only recently enabled Turner to gain control over her life and career. For years, the public image of aggressive sexual agency Turner projected belied the degree to which she was sexually abused and exploited privately. She was also materially exploited. Madonna's career could not be all that it is if there were no Tina Turner, and yet unlike her cohort, Sandra Bernhard, Madonna never articulates the cultural debt she owes black females. I mean, that right there is something to ponder, right? That real juxtaposition in their lives, right? So from the surface, they look the same. A sexual appetite for, a black man or a white man, for men. Fulfilling a sexual appetite for men, right? Whatever. But the life story behind that tragedy is one of social construction and what was the other word they used? And, oh, come on, it began with an A. Artifice. That's what it was. Social construction and artifice. So like an artificial kind of building of the social construction. It wasn't just from the outside. It was from the inside as well, right? So that's what they're saying. But, where was I? Yeah, so, but the backdrop of that story, she grew up in Redford. Okay. Outside Detroit. Okay. Suburb of Detroit. Okay. She wasn't pretty. Okay. But she made herself pretty and sexual. Same could be said about Tina Turner. I mean, she was beautiful sometimes, but, you know, didn't she play her own self in her movie? She wasn't always attractive, that's for sure, right? No woman is when they're in an abusive relationship. I was saying about how if you could see your spouse doing his thing, no matter what it was, if he that whatever it was that he did, it could be, landscaping, it could be climbing a mountain, it could be teaching, it could be, technology, but using his talents in the way that he professes they should be used, there isn't anything more attractive than that. It's why people find teachers so attractive, because they are doing exactly what many of them who people find attractive are doing exactly what they're made to do, and therefore they're very good at it. And anyone who sees somebody who's very good at what they do, that's attractive. That was what was attractive about Madonna. She was very good at what she did, right? But that being said, that wasn't the attraction of Tina Turner, was it? Not at all. Even though, you looked at those legs up, she that little tiny body, all that stuff, right? Okay. Throughout much of her... All right, I'm not there. In her most recent appropriations of blackness, Madonna almost always imitates phallic black masculinity. Although I read many articles which talked about her appropriating male codes, no critic seems to have noticed her emphasis on black male experience. In his Playboy profile, Playgirl of the Western World, Michael Kelly describes Madonna's crotch grabbing as an eloquent visual put-down of male phallic pride. He points out that she worked with choreographer Vince Paterson to perfect the gesture, even though Kelly tells readers that Madonna was consciously imitating Michael Jackson. He does not contextualize his interpretation of the gesture to include this act of appropriation from black male culture. And in the specific context, the groin-grabbing gesture is an assertion of pride and phallic domination that usually takes place in an all-male context. Madonna's imitation of this gesture could just as easily be read as an expression of envy. Freud would have. Throughout much of her autobiographical interviews, runs a thread of expressed desire to possess the power she perceives men have. Madonna may hate the phallus, but she longs to possess its power. She is always first and foremost in competition with men to see who has the biggest penis. She longs to assert phallic power, and like every other group in this white supremacist society, she clearly sees black men as embodying a quality of maleness that eludes white men. Hence, they are often the group of men she most seeks to initiate, taunting white males with her own version of black masculinity. When it comes to entertainment rivals, Madonna clearly perceives black male stars like Prince and Michael Jackson to be the standard against which she must measure herself, and that she ultimately hopes to transcend. Fascinated yet envious of black style, Madonna appropriates black culture in ways that mock and undermine, making her presentation one that upstages. This is most evident in the video like a prayer. Though I read numerous articles that discuss public outrage at this video, none focused on the issue of race. No article called attention to the fact that Madonna flaunts her sexual agency by suggesting that she is breaking the ties that bind her as a white girl to white patriarchy and establishing ties with black men. Now, here's the thing though too. we can all philosophize this and that and the other thing, but, you know, I kind of know Black culture. I kind of know it a little bit. I mean, I went to work in downtown Grand Rapids in the worst part of town, drove through the worst part of town to get to work, and it was United Way. So working with the people who work with the poorest of the poor in the community, right? So getting to know that. And then also, which weren't, you know, again, always Black. Black was 11% of the population if we were lucky. So there was a big Native American population there too. Relative to poverty. And then I went to Wayne State University and I drove this, you know, Grand River all the way there, which so didn't take the expressway. A lot of the times that I traveled, especially in the winter, it was just pathetic on the expressways in the winter. And then I just kept going in the summertime, the back ways, right? Stay off my ass. Don't let me get on yours. Those were my mottos. And drove through Redford. And so I know a little bit about it. And, you know, this is how she grew up. That is the neighborhood. You made it work for you. You were maybe not a minority in Redford, but you certainly had to mix. And that Black community in Detroit and suburbs didn't dominate politically or didn't dominate economically. Politically a little bit till a little bit later on, and didn't dominate economically, but they dominated physically. They dominated physically. You know, traveled in groups, had a physical presence about them. So you did. You know, I was born in Chicago. I remember why, and I know why we moved out, right? So there's all those things that go along with trying or living in a place that stays and assimilates. And clearly, she knew how to do that. So, you know, it's tough to criticize. You have to realize that really was her surroundings. Right? And then in a Redford area, you would see a greater distinction in definitions of masculinity between white men and Black men. For sure. Madonna's imitation of this gesture could just as easily be read as an expression of envy. I already said that. Through much of her autobiography, it runs a thread of expression of desire to possess the power she perceives men to have. Madonna may hate the phallus. All right, I already said that. When it comes to entertainment rivals, Madonna clearly perceives Black male stars like Prince to be her rival. All right. Fascinated yet envious of Black style, Madonna appropriates Black culture in ways that mock and undermine, making her presentation one that upstages. This is most evident in Video Like a Prayer. I already said that. She, however, and not Black men, does the choosing. The message is directed at white men. It suggests that they only labeled Black men rapists for fear that white girls would choose Black partners over them. Cultural critics commenting on the video did not seem at all interested in exploring the reasons Madonna chooses a Black cultural backdrop for this video, Black church and religious experience. Clearly, it was this backdrop that added to the video's controversy. Yeah, but that question really needs to be explored because that was exactly that culture as well. Cultural critics commenting on the video did not seem at all interested in exploring the reasons Madonna chooses a Black cultural backdrop for this video. This message is directed at white men. It suggests that they only labeled Black men rapists for fear that white girls would choose Black partners over them. Wow. Wow. And again, you know, if you were at a school, if you were white at a school like Redford, as a black person, you were higher up in class. As a white person, you were lower in class. So you were part of the weaker race. So what could you do except for accentuate differences in the race? And when you're teenagers, those differences would be exhibited through sexual behavior. In her commentary in the Washington Post, quote, Madonna, yuppie goddess, Brooke Masters writes, quote, most descriptions of the controversial video focus on its Catholic imagery. Madonna kisses a black saint and develops Christ-like markings on her hands. However, the video is also a feminist fairy tale. Sleeping Beauty and Snow White waited for their princes to come along. Madonna finds her own man and wakes him up. Notice that this writer completely overlooks the issue of race and gender. That Madonna's chosen prince was a black man is in part what made the representation potentially shocking and provocative to a white supremacist audience. Yet her attempt to exploit and transgress traditional racial taboos was rarely commented on. Instead, critics concentrated on whether or not she was violating taboos regarding religion and representation. In the United States, which was no different than with, wasn't it Sinead O'Connor? In the United States, Catholicism is most often seen as a religion that has little or no black followers, and Madonna's video certainly perpetuates the stereotype with its juxtaposition of images of black non-Catholic representations with the image of the black saint. Given the importance of religious experience and liberation theology in black life, Madonna's use of this imagery seemed particularly offensive, for she made black characters act in complicity with her as she aggressively flaunted her critique of Catholic manners, her attack on organized religion. Yet no black voices that I know of came forward in print calling attention to the fact that the realm of the sacred that is mocked in this film is black religious experience, or that is appropriative use of that experience was offensive to many black folks. Looking at the video with a group of students in my class on the politics of sexuality, where we critically analyze the way race and representations of blackness are used to sell products, we discussed the way in which black people in the video are caricatures reflecting stereotypes. They appear grotesque. The only role black females have in this video is to catch, i.e. rescue, the angelic Madonna when she is falling. This is just a contemporary casting of the black female as Mammy, made to serve as supportive backdrop for Madonna's drama. Black characters in Like a Prayer remind one of those early Hollywood depictions of singing black slaves in the Great Plantation movies, or those Shirley Temple films where Bojangles was trotted out to dance with Miss Shirley and spice up her act. Audiences were not supposed to be enamored of Bojangles. They were supposed to see what a special little white girl Shirley really was. In her own way, Madonna is a modern-day Shirley Temple. Certainly, her expressed affinity with black culture enhances her value. And that right there is a great example then why eyeballs would be on Madonna as the representation of a breaking free or a breaking out, right? Eager to see the documentary Truth or Dare because it promised to focus on Madonna's transgressive sexual persona, which I find interesting, I was angered by her visual representation of her domination over not white men of her domination over not white men, certainly not over Warren Beatty or Alec Kashishian, but people of color and white working class women. I was too angered by this to appreciate other aspects of the film I might have enjoyed. In Truth or Dare, Madonna clearly revealed that she can only think of exerting power along very traditional white supremacist, capitalistic, patriarchal lines. That she made people who were dependent on her for their immediate livelihood submit to her will was neither charming nor seductive to me or the other black folks that I spoke with who saw the film. We thought it tragically ironic that Madonna would choose as her dance partner a black male with dyed blonde hair. Perhaps had he appeared less like a white identified black male consumed by blonde ambition, he might have upstaged her. Instead, he was positioned as a mirror into which Madonna and her audience could look and see only a reflection of herself and the worship of whiteness. And the worship of whiteness she embodies. That white supremacist culture wants everyone to embody. Madonna used her power to ensure that he and other non-white women and men who worked for her, as well as some of the white subordinates, would all serve as her backdrop to her white girl makes good drama. I remember seeing this. This is all my era, and I am going to say agree with everything that she's saying about, you're seeing it for the first time. So for you to sit over there and act like you're some kind of artistic reviewer or, reviewer of the arts, right, is bullshit. This wasn't art of the time. It wasn't. That's why it was criticized. Stop acting like it's art when you're making a political statement from, the ghetto. She comes clean very early on. She's not from Detroit, and she keeps her essence authentic, if you ask me. So I'm not criticizing her. Not so far. But she was Redford's racist. Redford was racist. They moved out of the city for all kinds of reasons that had to do with race. And then there were, union issues with Detroit and the suburbs. Oh, forget about it. But I did have a problem with her sort of, I'm going to make this film and you have to be a part of it. And, here she is able to take this, what she felt was an unattractive woman, and turn it into a sexual object, and then forcing her subordinates to be part of the film. Maybe I don't want to be part of what is perceived as, on the verge of pornography. Right? Maybe I don't want to be part of that. And your truth or dare game that now subjects me to all kinds of criticism. I remember that for sure. Joking about the film with other black folks, we commented that Madonna must have searched long and hard to find a black female that was not a good dancer, one who would not deflect attention away from her. And it is telling that when the film directly reflects something other than a positive image of Madonna, the camera highlights the rage this black female dancer was suppressing. It surfaces when the subordinates have time off and are relaxing. As with most Madonna videos, when critics talk about this film, they tend to ignore race. Yet no viewer can look at this film and not think about race and representation without engaging in forms of denial. After choosing a cast of characters from marginalized groups, exactly, marginalized groups, which mostly are based on class and then, class, poverty. And then we're picking, those on the verge, marginalized groups. Non-white folks, heterosexual and gay white folks. Madonna publicly describes them as emotional cripples. And of course, in the context of the film, this description seems born out of the way they allow her to dominate, exploit, and humiliate them. Those Madonna fans who are determined to see her as politically progressive might ask themselves why it is she completely endorses those racist, sexist, classist stereotypes that almost always attempt to portray marginalized groups as defective. Because I'm not saying it's everyone's prerogative, but she didn't do introspection on it, right? She portrayed who she was by the way that she was raised. And her whole take it or leave it attitude is, I mean, that was tough. That was tough school. Yeah. Those were tough streets that you were being raised in. If you were raised in Detroit, you had other issues, but it was predominantly black. You started getting into the suburbs, you had some real issues back in the day. Some real issues. And they were all factory workers besides. I don't think I said that. Yeah, so they were all in the car plants besides. Okay. Let's face it, by doing this, Madonna is not breaking with any white supremacist, patriarchal status quo. She is endorsing and perpetuating it. She is presenting who she is and taking full advantage of the interest. That's what she's doing. Some of us do not find it hip or cute for Madonna to brag that she has a fascistic side, a side well documented in the film. While we did not see any of her cute little fascism in action when it was Warren Beatty calling her out in the film. No, the image of Madonna was the little woman who grins and bears it. No, her somebody's got to be in charge side, as she names it, was most expressed in her interaction with those representatives from marginalized groups who are most often victimized by the powerful. Why is it there is little or no discussion of Madonna as racist or sexist in relation to other women? Would audiences be charmed by some rich white male entertainer telling us he must play father and oversee the actions of the less powerful, especially women and men of color? So why did so many people find it cute when Madonna asserted that she dominates the interracial cast of gay and heterosexual folks in her film because they are crippled and she likes to play mother? No, this was not a display of feminist power. This was the same old phallic nonsense with white pussy at the center. And many of us watching were not simply unmoved, we were outraged. Perhaps it is a sign of a collective feeling of powerlessness that many black, non-white, and white viewers of this film who were disturbed by the display of racism, sexism, and heterosexism. Yes, it's possible to hire gay people, support AIDS projects, and still be blasted in the direction of phallic patriarchal heterosexuality and truth or dare and have so little and have said so little. You know, and that's it right there. People were surprised at your hypocritical attitude. She was breaking boundaries with Catholicism, and that's why it was a topic of conversation. It wasn't race for her, right? She's a racist. I mean, I don't know that Madonna is. I'm agreeing with this perpetuation of racism without a doubt. Every word she said, I felt about that film. So same thing. Well, I don't know that I agree with the Paris is Burning, but a lot of it, but certainly with Madonna at that time in her presentation. And she was young when she started, so I would bet she would be surprised at the charge of racism, even though this is evidenced. I saw it. It felt racist. I remember Warren Beatty calling her out on it, and it is, but not that strongly, because they were looked to be all surprised that they were on film. Here I am, and they are all, including Warren Beatty. Given the or we may feel, we may see that performer as above critique, or we may feel our critique will in no way intervene on the worship of them as a cultural icon. To say nothing, however, is to be complicit with the very forces of domination that make blonde ambition necessary to Madonna's success. Tragically, all that is transgressive and potentially empowering to feminist women and men about Madonna's work may be undermined by all that it contains that is reactionary and in no way unconventional or new. It is often the conservative elements in her work converging with the status quo that has the most powerful impact. For example, given the rampant homophobia in this society and the concomitant heterosexist voyeuristic obsession with gay lifestyles, to what extent does Madonna progressively seek to challenge this if she insists on primarily representing gays as in some way emotionally handicapped or defective? Or when Madonna responds to the critique that she exploits gay men by cavalierly stating, quote, what does exploitation mean? In a revolution, some people have to get hurt. To get people to change, you have to turn the table over. Some dishes get broken. End quote. I can only say this doesn't sound like liberation to me. Perhaps when Madonna explores those memories of her white working class childhood in a troubled family in a way that enables her to understand intimately the politics of exploitation, domination, and submission, she will have a deeper connection with oppositional Black culture. If and when this radical critical self-interrogation takes place, that's exactly what I said, didn't I? It's just not introspection. She didn't show introspection. She will have the power to create new and different cultural productions, work that will be truly transgressive, acts of resistance that transform rather than simply seduce. Do you think she's done that? That's the end of the chapter. I don't think so. I think she's falling abysmally short. But I don't think that was her mission. I think she was mad and she had a voice and she was going to say what she wanted to say, and it didn't matter what you thought of it. You know, kind of like Sandra Bernhard, as you described. This is Dr. Annette Feravich. We have finished chapter 10. One chapter. All right. And we didn't even fill up our whole hour. Tomorrow we will come, or tomorrow, we're back already. I know, I keep thinking, I really enjoy this, as you can see, because I spread it a little bit longer than what our schedule usually says. That being said, I wouldn't take it to 4 days a week. I might get a little bored on my 4 days off, but it does keep me motivated to keep moving along, right? And taking some responsibility for inspiring myself. So in a way that where somebody just might not listen or see it. Thanks so much for joining me here on January 22nd. It's been a blizzard out there. It is day 302 in the classroom. I am Dr. Annette Feravich, where we read to you in the reading room. That's what we do since the beginning, since its inception in 2023. The classroom has read to you in the reading room. Just love it. You might take a little backdrop. You might take a little time. I might take a little time. We didn't do that in the reading room. We read and see all the different stories that we've read here in the reading room. Thanks for joining. In the reading room only. We've already talked about it in the early birds. History, we've read a couple books. Whatever, in the Bookless classroom. We could bring in what we've read in the other places. No, I've had it all up to here with killer drugs. Thanks so much for joining me in the reading room, where no matter what we're doing, if we're reading in Early Birds, or if we're discussing in the reading room. We are all doing it. We are always doing it to make your mind, your body, and your spirit healthier. Thanks for joining me.